Well, welcome, y'all. We're excited to have y'all here, and thanks for taking a moment to introduce yourselves. I'll go ahead and introduce the Alliance for Decision Education. So, our organization is a national nonprofit and field builder with the mission of improving lives by empowering students with essential skills and dispositions for making better decisions. Founded in 2014 and backed by experts in decision sciences and a broad range of other fields, including several Nobel laureates, the Alliance believes that better decisions leads to better lives and a better society. As a field builder, the Alliance aligns, coordinates, and amplifies the efforts of organizations and individuals working towards the vision of decision education being a part of every student's learning experience. We partner with students, teachers, researchers, academic and business leaders, families, and community members to raise awareness and develop solutions that can be scaled in classrooms across the country. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Our work as a field builder gives us the opportunity to connect with folks who are implementing decision education in many different ways all over the place. And today we're going to hear from some of those at the teacher level, at the grade level, at the school level, in very different places around North America, and see the experiences people have had. So if you've been with us for the webinars thus far this summer, or you have been involved with the Alliance for Decision Education previously, hopefully you've been bought into the idea that decision education really matters for our students and they really need access to it. But you may be in a position where you're left wondering, okay, I think this is really important, but how do I actually do this? How do I actually begin to make this happen in my classroom, at my grade level, or in my school? And today we're going to hear from practitioners who have tried doing just that. And they're going to share their experiences with us. Some of the things they've tried have worked, some of the things they have tried have not worked, but we can learn as much from all of those pieces. And I'm very, very grateful for them to share their wisdom, their expertise with us, trying this at the student level, at the adult level, in the school system, and all across the board. We do not mean to suggest that the ways that you hear these individuals speak are the only way to implement decision education. Quite the contrary. We think that there's new, exciting ways that educators across the country are figuring to implement this in many, many different ways. These are just illustrative examples to give hopefully some inspiration into what might work at your own school. So you'll hear some things that they say, and you might want to just copy that exactly as it is and try it in your school. That's amazing. There may be other things that you kind of want to tweak and adjust based on how they do things and bring it into your school. And they might inspire you to try something completely new that has not been done before at all. So, regardless of how these folks are sharing their ideas. We're excited for their expertise and for you to learn from them and apply it in your own world. And so first, I am excited to turn it over to Joanne, who is joining us from British Columbia today.
Hi, I'm Joanne Calder. I am a grade 6 and 7 classroom teacher in Vancouver, BC, British Columbia. I'm going to talk quite fast because I have so much I want to share today. In my school district, 6-7 is part of the elementary system, which means I teach all subject areas, which has actually been really useful for decision education because I've been able to try lots of things across the curriculum and with the same group of students to build on those skills. I first got involved with decision education with a group of decision scientists in my area who were wanting to bring decision skills to the classroom. And since 2020, I've also been with the Alliance and have been trying things actively with my class, started with social studies, and in the last couple of years have tried to incorporate it into our daily practice and daily classroom activities across all subject areas and all areas. So I'm going to try and share 6 ideas, I think. It was very hard to choose what to do, and Kevin is going to give me the hook when my time is up because I could talk about this all day. So, one of the first things I ever tried was in making group decisions, building community. Something that was kids were arguing about was the desk arrangements every day coming up. I don't like where I'm sitting. Can you switch it up? So I started doing this. With a good decision, we weigh values, what's important to us against our options. So this was a nice starting point, and I've done this every year now for past 6 or 7 years because the kids know what's important to them and what they value about where they're seated in the classroom. So things like being close to friends, being able to see and hear, and then the big one I always say is being able to focus and learn. But they come up with that as well. For this particular one, I mean, every year they have slightly different options, but for this particular group, it was groups, horseshoe, partnered rows, single rows. And then this is called a consequence chart. We weigh what we value against the options. So for this group, they felt horseshoes did not meet that. So horseshoe shape around the classroom because they felt that it was hard to get around. They couldn't see and hear if they're facing sideways, and it was very distracting because people would make faces. This year, I actually didn't do this activity until after spring break because I had quite a challenging group behavior wise. And I felt I needed to make the unilateral decision that we were in partnered rows facing forward. But after spring break, we did this because they were really pushing to go into groups. We had a great discussion. I started off and said, my most important thing is that nobody is talking while I'm teaching. And I didn't think they'd be able to do it because I said, if you break my core key value, we can't go with what you decide. So they did, in fact, decide groups. And I only had to remind them a couple of times about what was important to me when they would start chatting when I was teaching. And they actually rose to the occasion. So having that discussion was so fantastic. Um, and so good. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So after I did a couple of group decisions with my class, this was the activity that got me hooked on decision education. So I'm Canadian, so in US you might not know who Don Cherry is. He was a famous hockey commentator who had a show called Coach's Corner on TV. So shortly after I started doing decision ed, he made some racist comments on his show, and there was a big thing, he should be fired. So the kids came in yelling at each other, he should be fired, he shouldn't be fired. They got into this big argument. I dropped my math lesson and said, okay, this is a great decision thing, should he or should he not be fired. We listed all the things that were important to us. Options, I said, is there something between the polarized options of yes, he should be fired, no, he shouldn't? They said, well, maybe he could apologize, or maybe his show could be taken off for a month, or maybe his pay gets suspended or for a time, or he pays a fine. So they could see there were some options in the middle. The cool thing about this is they came in yelling at each other, and after they left, the yelling had stopped, and most of them had moved from a firm yes or no into a position somewhere in the middle. And I started to see the potential for depolarizing thinking and really getting people to weigh one another's perspectives and finding a spot somewhere in the middle. So this was the thing that really sold me that, wow, this is a really neat process that opens up discussion and helps people to weigh one another's perspectives. A fun little thing, we kind of were brainstorming what was important to us. And at the end, one of the boys said, I really feel like maybe he there needs to be a consequence, or his show shouldn't be on anymore. He goes, but I love Coach's Corner so much, and really it's the most important thing to me. And the kids all understood that, and they were really supportive that, yeah, that's okay, that's you want your favorite show to stay on, and sometimes we value different things for different reasons. Okay, next one. So Brooke Moore, who works in my school district and is very involved in decision education, created these cards called endorse, accept, or oppose. And so whenever we do make a big decision about something, or we're trying to decide where we stand on a big event, I have a continuum in my classroom. Over by the coat room is endorse, over by the windows is oppose, and then accept is anywhere in between on the continuum. So when we're having a discussion such as the Don Cherry one, I say, well, do you endorse, accept, or oppose him being fired? So endorses mean, yes, I'm 100% in, he needs to be fired. Oppose means I'm completely against him being fired. And accept is they stand somewhere in the middle. And I get them to stand after we've collected our background information. where they are on the whatever issue we're discussing, and then I ask kids to explain why they're standing where they're standing, and if they like the argument or connect with the argument they're hearing, they shift their position as we have our discussion. This has been a really valuable tool. I do it a lot, so the kids get really good at knowing exactly where they need to go. And often I get them to color in where they stand and they can switch it. I've kind of, once we get onto it, I don't even use the cards anymore. I'm just like, okay, we're doing endorse, accept, oppose. We're going to talk today about whether Canada should still participate in the Beijing Olympics. That was one I had done a couple years ago. Okay, next one, please. Okay, so this was a science unit. This decision ed has been great for weighing ethical scientific decisions. This one is a unit that I've done on alternative energy and what type of alternative energy could be best for our school if we wanted to get off of our mainstream source. And I like this because I was able to incorporate it into math, probability lessons, and the language of probability, which I do quite a bit. So for this one, they were weighing different options as far as what would be a good fit. So solar, biomass, and hydroelectric. After we had weighed or collected a ton of background information, and you can see they had to come up with positive and negatives for each of the outcomes of switching to that, and then what they thought their best guesses to likelihood was. Thanks, Kevin. If you can go to the next one. After I've done this unit twice now with classes, and the reflections are phenomenal. Reflecting on our decisions, I think, is really important as well, and something that helps them consolidate their thinking. So I just highlighted a couple of things. So these are 3 different student reflections in 3 different fonts. Honestly, 22 of my 28 students' reflections were phenomenal. I had a hard time choosing, but some key takeaways for them. One thing I learned was how much my values impact my decision. Making a group decision is harder than making a personal decision because you have to compromise. Knowing what all of us valued helped us make a group decision, and my core values affected my decision quite a bit. I do a lot on identifying our core values and what's important to us in the first term. I do focus on that a bit, and they get really good at figuring out what's important to them as the year goes on. Okay, next one. Oh, this is so fun. So this year, I thought to help the kids consolidate their thinking, we have a grade 1 buddy class. So I wanted to see how decision skills would work with the younger students. So we kind of went into an imaginary play space or imaginary thinking. So the question we asked, would you rather drive a car or would you rather ride a unicorn? And they had to talk with their grade 1 buddies, and they had to make a decision, and they could each make a different decision. And then they had to write why they were deciding what they were deciding and put their sticky up on this chart paper on the board. And it was really cool to see my class, the grade 6s and 7s, explaining the activity to the ones. And then I asked my kids to model changing their mind. So when we came back for a group decision, and we were, or not a group decision, but to discuss as a group, and kids were saying what they thought and why, the kids were welcome to move their stickies. So trying to get in from sort of getting entrenched in their choice, if they could be convinced that there was a reason. And one of the grade 1s put up her hand and she said, I'd actually like to change my mind. I put ride a unicorn, but I don't think it would be very likely that I would be able to find a unicorn. And so even if I chose that, I don't think that would happen. So I'm going to switch to drive a race car. So here she was modeling this probabilistic thinking and the likelihood of something happened. For a 6-year-old, it was really cute too. Okay, next one. Okay, so in the last 2 years, I've kind of branched out from group decisions, social studies, science, and into using it in literature. And so I found some kids figuring out what's important to them, especially if they have a trauma background, can be uncomfortable. So I thought, let's remove this and analyze some decisions that characters in books have made. So I did a deep dive into that with the kids this year, and we really looked at different characters in different books and stories we were reading, and had some deep thinking questions that we brought to literature circles where they would analyze a character's decision. We did pre-mortems where we would stop at a point in a book if I was doing a read aloud and say, okay, character has a big decision here. What are some different directions this could go, and what could some possible outcomes be? How likely do you think that is to happen? And then, sorry, the next one is just the second half of that page. I took Josh's advice and split it up. So you can see, and we talked about bias. We've done a lot of work on bias. That's a harder skill. The sevens are better at it than the sixes, but they're just starting to get a handle on it. But that was a big focus with our language arts program this year. Okay, and I think, do I have one more, or was that was it? Hopefully I didn't go over.
Amazing. You were spot on. Thank you so much, Joanne. And we'll be able to, if we have time at the end, we'll be able to ask some questions. But hopefully, you're feeling as energized as I am from hearing Joanne's work and tons of practical, off-the-shelf strategies that might work for you or not. And that's, that's great. And now we get to hear some more. So I'm about to turn it over to Josh, who is stateside with us, and he's going to tell us about the work that he's doing.
Hi, my name is Joshua Trujillo. I am a high school teacher at the Cabarrus-Kannapolis Early College High School in Concord, North Carolina. Before I jump into how decision education has really come into to be a cornerstone of how we support students, I really want to talk quickly about what is an early college, since it's a very different academic setting. Essentially, we take a certain group of students in our freshman level course, or as freshmen, and they are taking their high school and college classes. They're taking all their high school classes, their junior and no, hold on, rewind. Their freshman and sophomore years, they're taking all their high school classes. Their junior and senior years, they're taking essentially all college classes. So the challenges that our students face, that they have to jump from a middle school to a high school mindset really quickly, and then just as quickly they have to jump from a high school to a college mindset. So we really want to help support our students in order to be as successful as possible. Our mission and our vision are right there, and we really want as many kids as possible to be successful. Early colleges were really designed for historically disadvantaged groups of people. So we really want to give students a way to create generational change and positively impact our students. We can move on to the next one. So I have a unique role where I teach specifically just a decision education class. And how that came about is our school was fortunate enough to get an incubator grant from the Alliance of Decision Education. So we were able to really invest in our school and create a course that best meets what our students need. So during the sophomore year, it's really more it's really seeing how we apply these decision education techniques. And specifically what I'm doing in the fall is I'm having them research and prepare a project. We do extension activities in my chemistry course, which is essentially they have to look at some sort of content or phenomenon or something that's interesting that goes beyond what we learned about in class. I've had kids look at how a microwave works, how tattoo ink works, what's the chemical composition of that. It's really just a way for them to infuse their interest with the content. So that way there's less of a, when am I going to use that? Just because chemistry is essential science, it's involved with everything. But so I have them research and a project, and I have them research and prepare a group project, because those are vastly different assignments. I really want to set them up for success. A really great thing about decision education is that it's a cornerstone, or really fixation is just making sure that you have data to support your claim. So I want them to be able to present data. If you need to be able to present it in a compelling way to show people that your way of thinking is not necessarily the right way, but an appropriate or something to consider. After that, I want them to do some post high school prep, whatever that means, whether it be college, whatever it be like go into the field or whatever. And it's interesting because the book, How to Decide by Annie Duke, what we use for our freshman year, it really kind of walks you through all the different steps you want to do if you're making a big decision like moving across the country. If you're a person and you know that you hate cold weather, you probably don't want to move somewhere where it's going to be cold like 75% of the year, right? So you're never going to be able to have all the answers in order to make the most informed decision, but you can find information of the values that are important to you and make sure that they are represented in that big change you want to do. I also have them do resumes and a job fair to kind of get some experience out there. And then the last big thing I have them do for the fall decision education is really just make one big decision. And it's purposely vague. So they could try and go for an internship or just something that they considered big and kind of like walk me through, how did you think about this process? So we do project updates. So what's their timeline? What did they complete it this week? What do they need to complete by next time? Are you on schedule? And if it's a group project, how did each person positively add to your project? So that may be a little bit tough sometimes, group work, because it can be challenging, but you should always be trying to find a positive spin on everything. Chemistry in the spring, I have them already started on those extension activity projects. That's already in a good work there. But other ways I'm incorporating decision education is with the CER framework, which in science is claim, evidence, and reasoning. So anytime you make a claim, there should be evidence that you can point to, and your reasoning should tether both the claim and evidence together. So that's very decision education centric as well. So if you make a claim or have reason, it should be, based on data you can point to, and then test review and then sort of different corrections or other ways that I incorporate that. And I have some examples to show you all. So the first example that I show you how I'm incorporating decision education is just how I set up my course. Now I have a lot of flexibility, so this is really, really nice that I can do this, but I want to show students that there's a lot of different resources available in my course and they can be successful. So test one, everyone has to do all the micromanaging work, but test two, if you get at least an 85 on that, and you can, or test one, if you get an 85 on that, you don't have to do all that work for test two. I really want to show them that if they're making those decisions in order for them to be as successful as they want to be, or to jump through the hoops so that I don't have to do more work, that they can be. So I want them to kind of transition to test 3 and 4, where they're eventually basically at the college level, like how they're going to be assessed in their college science courses or any college course. Because again, at their junior year, they're taking essentially college courses. So I need them to make that jump from high school to college rather quickly. Move to the next one. My first example of how I'm incorporating decision education is just a modeling activity. So I want them to create what should the model of the atom look like. I have the bolded things like how I want them to have it look like. It changes with each model. But we talk about how the model has changed over the year of the atom. Why has it changed? What is a model? A model is just a simplified representation of something more complicated. There's always going to be pros and cons with every model. We can move on to the next one because it kind of shows a visual. So if most of us were to, if I had to ask everyone to draw a picture of a model, we'd probably draw that second to last one or that third, the one in the middle. But those aren't the best representations. But why is it that that is what we see when we look in the textbooks? There's lots of different reasons for that. It's easier to understand. It's more simplified. It's easier for us to grasp at that level of content. But the more complicated quantum mechanical model, the one on the far right, it is the more accurate. So we're talking about how we're making decisions to essentially kind of put less accurate information, but just to make information more accessible. So that's our introduction to models. We have conversations they do as an individual, then as a group, then as a larger group. So as we compare different people's work, they are gradually, ideally, getting a better and better model that they'll be consistently improving with new data. We can go to the next one. Another thing that I have them do is I have them just analyze data. So this would be just what they wouldn't have. They would only see the first question, the what trends do you see in the data table. All the other ones would be individual because I don't want to overwhelm them. But this would be kind of like a warm up. So the students would look at this and they'd be talking with a group. Students know that a simple yes or no, or the answer is 4 is not good enough. There's always going to be a follow-up question. Why do you think that? What information are you using to support that? Why are you so confident in your answer? And that's really to help support students that are a little bit more introverted and maybe don't understand the reasoning. They kind of need another student to tell them, but they don't want to make themselves embarrassed or anything like that. So we really try and build a support system in my classroom about how we can all support each other to be as successful as possible. But yeah, they're analyzing data here. All of this would be brand new vocabulary: nuclear charge, Coulombic attraction. There's a lot of crazy, complicated looking stuff in there. but I just want them to see the trend. So with the nuclear charge all of one, we see that as the distance increases, the force of attraction what does it do? It decreases. So what we're seeing is that I want them to find those trends and really make those arguments and try and figure out like what kind of is going on within that idea. We can go into the next one. The last example I have is kind of like review activity. So throughout my years of teaching chemistry, I have all these examples of incorrect ways that students would either write or a chemical formula or name. So I want them to tell me what the correct answer is. But then also, like, what are the common misconceptions or common mistakes that would have caused students to kind of like go down that rabbit hole? So we're kind of doing like postmortems at that point. It's like, how could have a student created for the first one, capital C, capital A, capital O? Like, what's wrong there? So it is a little bit more challenging to bring the decision education sort of ideas into your content classes, which is why I wanted to show examples with that. It's a lot easier to make it with your decision education exclusive course. But I do think that decision education very much falls in line with how science works. You have an idea and you assume that idea is correct until you get more data and then you readjust. So those are my examples that I have for today, and I hope you enjoyed them.
Thank you, Josh, so much. And again, we're going to be able to come back to you while we, oh, it looks like you've already got some questions in the chat already. But we appreciate that. And yeah, and it's also really great to see the different aspects of decision making that various educators are focusing or emphasizing. So with Joanne, we saw like a big focus on the values-based decision making. And with Josh, we saw rationality, and both of those are really crucial components of effective decision making. And we're seeing it at multiple levels, whether it's a standalone decision education course or integrated into other core content areas. There's lots of ways to do that, which is all really, really exciting. So again, we're going to continue to see really, really cool examples, and we're going to actually turn it over to a school level. So now we're going to hear from Dr. Major, who's going to tell us a little bit about his work with decision education.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Jason Major, principal of Deborah Elementary School. I'm going into my 10th year. It's a Chicago public school. We're a pre-K to 8 school, all neighborhood, have about 750 kids and about 50 teachers. So I learned about the Alliance about a year and a half ago. Like many people, I just got very addicted to books like Thinking Fast and Slow and Thinking in Bets. And in one of those outlets, I found out about the Alliance and started talking to Kevin, started talking to Abby. And I just love their approach so much because they're just realistic on how hard it is to implement things at the school level. Both of them are both principals. So like, I'm just very impressed with the organization because they understand just the nitty gritty of running a school and how hard it is to get things started. Our 6th grade team last year piloted some Alliance lessons last year. And this year we were fortunate enough to get into the incubator program. And what we're going to try to do is merge the decision science framework with some of the other frameworks we have going on in the school. So there's MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. So that's like how you make decisions on interventions and programs for students. We're going to use decision science in that. We have a group of teachers who use a framework called inquiry to action, which is inquiry-based learning. They're going to try to merge some decision science into that. Our computer science teacher is going to merge it into computer literacy and media literacy. So we just have some really exciting things going on, and I'm excited about it. But I wanted to share just 3 brief things that I've used as a school administrator that have helped. And we'll just get to those. So one would be the pre-mortem. So it was mentioned earlier, but here was an example of what I did with my staff last year at the start of the year. So when teachers came back the first week, we had a pre-mortem saying, we just had the worst first week with students that we've ever had when we left Friday at 3 o'clock. What conditions led to this being true? So the staff all brainstormed. They said, well, there was no structure. The students didn't know the expectations. We didn't take time to build community and things like that. So in a pre-mortem, you say, well, that is what went wrong. That's how it went terribly. What happened? Once they brainstormed what happened, said, well, we know that that's what's going to make this the worst week we've ever had. What can we do now to make sure that doesn't happen? And from there, they brainstorm ideas. Well, we need clear expectations. We need clear expectations in the hallways and in the lunchroom and in the classrooms that we all agree on. We need to take time to do community circles with our classes and engage them in the process of coming up with expectations. So that was the pre-mortem, and we actually had a pretty good week with students that first week last year. In the other half of the staff, there's another way you can use this. It's called the pre-parade. The pre-parade is just the exact opposite question. We just had the best first week ever with students. What led that to being so? So the pre-mortem is something we use a lot. My admin team uses it sometimes before meetings that we think could get a little contentious. And another way we've done it too is just kind of set norms for meeting. It's like, we want to have a successful meeting. Let's say we leave here with having a very valuable use of time for the next hour. What happened? People brainstorm them, and that kind of comes up with your norms for that meeting. So the pre-mortem and the pre-parade is something that we've started using a lot. Next one is words of likelihood. Annie Duke talks about this a lot in her blog posts, and she has an activity around it. So it's thinking in probabilities would be the domain on this one. Frequently means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So you want to say a % chance it happens instead of a frequently chance. So an exercise you can do with this, and I did this with my MTSS multi-tiered system supports team last year. Instead of frequently, if someone says that to you, what % chance would you think that was? So if someone says frequently, what does that mean to you? If someone says slam dunk, what does that mean to you? And I wanted to actually show the results. I did this with a breakout session I did at our Leadership Institute in my school district last week. So Kevin, if you click the next one, when we did it, we had about 25 people in the room. So we had everyone fill out a Google form saying, if someone said frequently, what % chance would you think that was? And here was the range of all the scores. And this shows why it's very helpful to be specific. So for the word frequently in the room, someone thought that was a 90% chance and someone thought that was a 30% chance. Even with something like slam dunk, someone thought that was a 100% chance. Someone else thought it was 75% chance. So even though that's a smaller range, like there is a clear difference between someone thinking someone has a 100% chance of happening and someone thinking it's only a 75% chance. So this was just really eye-opening. I like the one about possibly too. Someone thought possibly was 100%. Someone else thought it was 25%. So that's the difference between sure thing, 100% sure, and flipping a coin and having come up with heads 2 times in a row. So that's a wide range. This exercise just does a really good job of like level setting things. We talk a lot at my school about using clear language. One that always comes up is like, the student was disrespectful. Well, disrespectful means 100 things to 100 different people. And using this exercise just kind of opens people up to thinking like that. If we can't agree on what words mean that translate to numbers, how in the world are we going to agree on words that have subjective meanings to everyone? And then the final tool I wanted to share with you is called the weight and rate. So this is something you can do in different than like a simple pro and con list. So this is one that we used when we were selecting a new math curriculum last year. We were down to 2. We were down to the district one that is provided called Skyline, and we were down to one called Beast Academy Classroom, which is from the Art of Problem Solving, their own math curriculum for 1st to 5th grade. So instead of just having a pro and con, what I did was I had each grade level team think of what are the different categories that are important to us when selecting a math curriculum. So at the top there, you will see this team thought differentiation and accessibility, student-friendly, critical thinking, standards align, a home connection, and alignment of assessments. So you see the numbers to the right there. That is the %, the weight that they give to each one of those. So if you see Monica, 30%, she weighted practice the most important to her. 30% of the total of all those things, she weighted practice as the most important. And you see Joanna there on the right side had 20. So the goal here in a weight and rate is once you've come up with your categories, you want to have them all equal 100. That is your weight. So that is what is most important to the team there, added up to 100. From there, then they took both curricula and they ranked both of them from 1 to 10. So you see below there, Monica had Beast Academy ranked at 10 out of 10 on practice, and she had Skyline ranked a 5. And then what you do from there is you take the top weight, you multiply it by the rating from 1 to 10, and at the bottom there, you get a score. And that's how you determine. It doesn't have to be a decision you make for sure. This is just gives you a good idea on how to guide your thinking and make sure you're following a process of making a decision. But in both cases here, and this happened in all the grade levels, the Beast Academy curriculum was far superior in their own weights and rates across grade levels on every single one. And that is the one we actually ended up choosing as our math curriculum. And people enjoyed the exercise because people felt like they had a voice. And in a simple pro and con list, the problem with the pro and con list is the pro and the con are rated exactly the same. But something can be far more important to you in the pro column than it is the con column. And this just kind of helps level playing field for you. Those are 3 very brief tools and very quick, but those are 3 that we use all the time. And I always am looking for more things to incorporate into our practice. Thanks so much.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Jason. So, hopefully, like me, you're just feeling on fire. We get asked a lot. People say like, okay, great. You sold me. We really want to do decision education. How do we do that? And hopefully through this, you can see that there's many, many, many things. Some things were very small things that can be done in a 5-minute activity that can kind of carry us through. Others are much larger, like creating a whole course in decision making, right? And there's lots and lots and lots of things in the middle. Not all of these things are going to work at every school, but hopefully they've given some good insights and things that we can build off of. I want to open it up to any questions that the group has. I'll start by asking some questions, and then if you have questions, feel free to use the hand raise function on Zoom, or you can type your question into the chat, and we'll make sure to get to as many of them as we can. But I'll ask a couple just to get started. And my first question that I will ask the group is, how important have you found it in your experience to make the teaching of decision education explicit? So, like telling students, or Jason, in your case, like leading the faculty and saying, what we're going to do is going to, like, this thing that we did is going to improve the way that you make decisions, and like calling it out and drawing those connections naturally. And how much do you rely on the activities to sort of like work with osmosis to like improve the way that students think and make decisions? How explicit do you feel like you have to be?
I can start. I feel like I, in the past, wasn't explicit enough. And so this past year, I really tried to make it explicit to the point where on the agenda on the board, I would often put decision-making skills on the agenda so that the kids would connect that and we would talk about the steps. And yeah, because before I was making it more implicit and inserting these things just into regular lessons to do with probability or literature or whatever. And I think it's important to make it explicit. And that's something I've realized more and more as I've gone along.
I agree. I think that it's important to start with it will be more explicit, and then students can, or adults can then naturally kind of bring those into their day-to-day life, because we don't want decision education to be only used for academic stuff. We want it to be used for every aspect of life. So if you show students that, okay, this is a successful method for you use in school, and like, oh, and you can also use it for decisions outside of school, then I mean, I've seen kids like just naturally start using these tools without me having to micromanage it. So they are seeing the usefulness of it, and you kind of have to convince them, and you have to kind of trick kids sometimes and making them believe it's their own idea. Be like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, you should do that. So I agree. I think that it's important to explicitly teach it and then kind of show them how helpful it is, and then kind of let them use it as they want to use it.
From an administrator perspective, I never want to come across like I'm forcing teachers to do things, because then it just doesn't work. So like I always encourage staff to like take risks, try some new ideas. And I like putting things out there to them. So like when I gave it to the 6th grade team, it's like, I think this stuff is amazing. I would love if you tried it. They did. We got them support from Kevin and some of the other staff at the Alliance, and they tried it out. They were very honest on some things that still needed some work, but that doesn't mean we're going to give up. We're going to keep trying to do it and keep trying to improve it. And I think if I would force people to do it and then it doesn't work, the chances more people are going to try later is way, it's not nearly as high. So it took me a while to realize that, because as a teacher, I always wanted to just try things and try everything, but not everyone is like that. So you have to toe a delicate line between just giving people support and letting them try it. So it is a little different at the administrative level. I wanted to answer that question that just came in the chat too. So we did a pre and post test with the 6th grade last year. I actually don't know the results. So when they started the units last year, they gave the kids a pre-test, and then they did give them a post test at the end. I would have to ask Alliance how they did on it. I know there was some growth. I think that's the other thing too. It's like, just try something. That's what I always encourage to. It's like, just try something. There's plenty you can choose from. Just start with something very small and grow from there.
Those are great questions. I'm going to ask one more, and then Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you. And if other folks have questions, please, again, feel free to use those hand raise. I think y'all have spoken about the impact that this has had on students. And so you've been able to say, like, my students used to do this, now they do this, and I'm seeing this. And so you've spoken to the impact at the student level, which has been very exciting. I'm wondering, are you hearing anything from families, parents, guardians, about decision education? Are they noticing anything? Are you having any conversation at that level?
I've had parents comment on how well versed their kids are in current events and how interested they have become in the world around them, and how intelligent the discussion is about current events we've talked about in class. And hopefully they are then spreading that to new things that they're hearing about. But where, yeah, kids are wanting to actively seek out the news and know what's going on in the world. So that was a comment I got from a parent who wondered what I was doing that had made her son so interested in being a good global citizen. So
We've had a lot of positive comments from the teacher, or the teachers, the parents at our schools as well, that come in, and we have a lot of student nights where they can come and see what the students are doing. So it's been positive on our end as well.
We haven't done much with the parent facing part of it, but I know when we do the incubator this year, we're going to do a better job of communicating it to parents next year.
Thank y'all. Okay, I want to turn over to Mark, and then Lisa, I see that you posted a great question in the chat that I think we should air to see if any of our amazing educators have exercise that they would share on that topic. And then, yeah, keep the questions coming. But for now, Mark, please go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up on that it's nice, if the kids are learning decision education, in a lot of ways, the parents get hit with it. And in some ways, maybe it might be nice to give them a clue what's happening in the PTA meeting or something. But anyway, I was thinking so many decisions students have to make. They're not the decision makers, it's their parents or some other authority. So one really good skill is, how do you negotiate decisions in that way? And, a lot of it is, make it a good decision for the decision maker too. So it's more likely they'll want to do. So I wonder if you discuss that problem and those skills. And anyone can answer, which probably isn't. How about Joanne?
I was going to say, I saw that Josh had unmuted. Did you have something? Go ahead, Josh.
I was gonna say something, but essentially with decision education, it's all about like creating the best decision based on the data you have. And if you're in that situation, if the parent doesn't have all the best data in order to make the most informed decision, I mean, I know that not every household is going to have a situation where their kids and the parents are going to be talking and making decisions in a harmonic way. Sometimes it's just like a, you do this because I said so sort of situation. But if it's one of those situations where you can communicate with people and be like, okay, this is why I think this is the best decision, and here's the reasons why I think it'll be beneficial, I think that's a productive way to go about having those discussions. But also, I put a message in the chat for you, but also, I tell students there's always going to be decisions that are outside of your control. There's no reason to get overwhelmed by those decisions just because you have no control of them. So don't be overwhelmed by things that are outside of what you can influence.
And I was going to say with, for example, the desk organization is knowing what all the stakeholders value and what's important to them. I have found is really important in getting the kids to understand my perspective and where I come from. It's very hard for me to teach and hard for other people to learn when you are talking. And for me, that's one of the most important things about how we arrange the desks. I don't necessarily care how we arrange them as long as that piece is being met. So them hearing that from me made the arrangement they wanted successful. And I really don't think it would have if they didn't know where I was coming from. So I'm hoping they can take these skills and then communicate with their parents or coaches or other adults in their life who sort of hold more of the control because they're still young, and it will enable them to have constructive discussions about what's important to everybody.
All right, thank you.
Awesome.
I was going to say I can answer Lisa's question while I'm unmuted. So yes,
Yeah.
exercises used that help kids imagine consequences of their actions in the near future and the far future. So that's sort of the pre-mortem I was talking about. One way I do that is with, as I said, with characters in stories that we're reading or novels that we're reading, is trying to be creative about different paths, different possible outcomes, and what's the likelihood of these different outcomes happening. We also have a subject called career education, which involves, making good personal decisions. And so I have a whole set of sort of hypothetical scenarios that are typical things that kids in middle school age will possibly face. And then I have an activity where we analyze different choices that they could make and what are the possible outcomes of those various choices. So, yeah. And then I also have a decision journal that they keep where they reflect on their own decisions that they are about to make, or decide what they're about to make, or reflect back on ones they have made and think about if it went well or what they could have done differently. We talk a lot about, well, was it luck that made it go well or made it go poorly? Or was it a good decision that made it go well or made it go poorly? And I think that's an important thing to differentiate, because often we make a bad decision and we get lucky, or we make a good decision and we get unlucky. And for me, that's been a really game-changing sort of thing that I sort of knew but hadn't absorbed in my own life, that's made a big difference in my own life in sort of eliminating regret for me in my own personal decision process. So yeah, that's a neat concept that I've been exploring with my students recently.
Lisa, that's a question that we could easily talk about for 17 hours. I think it's a really, really, really good one. Decision scientists often talk about the trade-offs between like immediate gratification now and like long-term gratification in the future. And most of us tend to engage in temporal discounting. So we tend to go for the immediate gratification and delay the larger benefits that can happen in the future. Interestingly, there are some people who have the exact opposite problem. They seem too much to favor what could happen in the future, and they almost sacrifice their complete happiness and well-being now. But for most of us, we could benefit from a little bit less instant gratification and a little bit more there, and thinking long term. And there are a variety of strategies, from mindfulness to just all sorts of things that help students develop that. I think one thing that's interesting is some of those habits, like especially the ones that you're mentioning, like, oh, I shouldn't just punch Johnny in the face when he makes a comment to me, like, let me think about the consequences. Let me gonna do those things. Some of those are they just take like a long time to sort of like train our brain to think that way. I think sometimes I've seen educators get really frustrated where a student will sort of act impulsively, and then the teacher will take the student in the hallway after class and have like a 5-minute conversation with the student, which is good. Love that. But the next day, the student might act impulsively, and the teacher might say, well, these talks aren't working, or clearly, other things. And I think it's just important to know that, like, it takes all of us, a while to sort of make really strong decisions in this way. So sometimes it does take a little bit of patience, but there is research out there that, for example, we can overcome temporal discounting. It's just one illustration.
Just to jump in with what you're saying, Kevin, is like research also shows that you have to learn something like 30 times in order for it to become like a routine. So like these are new ways of thinking. So it's going to take, like you're saying, time and practice for you to be able to be like, oh yes, I shouldn't be doing that. I should be thinking in this sort of way. So changes take time.
Yeah, and I don't want that to scare anyone from saying like, well, I'm not going to try because I don't have all the time in the world, because usually something's better than nothing. But I do think we just have to give each other patience and grace that, like, some of these things aren't going to happen overnight. Just like the first time you teach kids fractions, they're not going to instantly understand fractions, right? Like, it takes a while, but like we still try, to teach kids fractions. So I think that that's important. Mark's popped another question, and he wants to know, Jason, in your experience, when you used a weighting rate, for example, to select curriculum or other ways, I know you use it in a variety of strange. When you do it, do your staff use a pre-selected form, or do they help generate the criteria that's important?
So when I did the one with the math curriculum, I introduced the idea and then they just worked on it independently during the meeting. So to make sure that they did it right instead of just turning them loose on their own. I was not the sole decision maker. I have like an admin team. So I have an assistant principal and an instructional coach. So we were like the ultimate decision makers there. Um, and I was the person moderating, me and a couple other members of my team.
And I just want to stress too, like, if the way that Jason does this works for you, then please copy what he does and just like do it in your setting. That's great. But the thing to stress is, like, we are putting these folks up as illustrative examples. There are so many ways. So I've been part of teams that have done weighting rates where we will collectively decide together, here are the criteria that's important, and here's our weights, so that everybody has the same weights. And then we enter into a phase where we each set our individual rates, but we'll all be united on the same weight template. And you may have other ways that work in even different ways. So we are nearing the end of our time with these folks, but I really want to thank them so much for the work that they do as practitioners in the field. Is outstanding. And a lot of these things, they probably 99% of them, they came up themselves. They generated them and said, we sort of taught them a little bit about the science behind it, but then they're like, here's how I'm going to apply this, and here's how I'm going to apply that. And now folks are using their stuff all over the place. So I really want to thank them for creating all that wonderful work and for coming on this webinar today and sharing it. And for everybody who's joining us today, I hope that it has inspired you to try decision education in your own way, in whatever level you are, and with whatever scope of influence you have. That might mean taking ideas from the Alliance website, from the folks that have shared. It might mean creating your own new initiatives. And if so, we really desperately want to hear about them so that we can share your brilliance with other schools around the country. as well. So thank you all so much. I'm going to send an email. The email will include a survey. Please let us know what you thought about this session. I will also encourage you to sign up for the newsletter that the Alliance for Decision Education puts out. It's a great way to keep abreast of wonderful things that are happening in the field and wonderful opportunities that are available to you. And we have one final session left in our summer Lunch and Learn series. Join us 1 week from today. We're going to be talking about group decision-making models. So thank you all so much for coming. Really appreciate all the questions and the insights and the engagement. And I hope this has been a helpful and useful use of your time.